Hello my friends, welcome to Carpo's channel. Welcome to 15-minute free thinking, or Carpo's Corner, or the channel with 63 years of the greatest YouTube ratings in the world. Let's just say that I never really know how to start a video, and even more so when I'm talking about a topic like psychedelics, LSD, psilocybin. So I want to get it right out there. I don't want to beat around the bush, and I should make a disclaimer right here at the beginning to make it very clear, as all psychedelic YouTubers know. Nothing I say here is intended to diagnose, prevent, or cure any disease, and nothing I say should be taken as medical advice, and you should be responsible for your own choice of what you consume. With that out of the way, this is not for minors, this is for adults, even though I was a minor when I first discovered some of these things. And I know that a lot of people out there as well have had the same experience. So this is going to be a unique discussion about psychedelics. I want to let you know it's off the cuff. None of this has been rehearsed or pre-recorded or pre-thought about. This is all right off the top of my head, which is not very common for YouTube videos these days. As a YouTuber, this would be video number, I believe, 4059. I looked the other day, I couldn't believe I had like 4,057 videos, and out of all of those, I only have a handful of psychedelic videos, maybe like 10, and all of those have been made unlisted because YouTube was censoring and canceling my videos and deleting them. So all of them are still available on my Patreon page, of course, not to promote the Patreon, but that's the only place I could put it as unlisted, and I could put the links to it. And this video isn't going to talk about psychedelics as a novice, or what you should or shouldn't consume, or the benefits of psychedelics. This is going to be like not Psychedelics 101, but rather Psychedelics Advanced. And what I mean by that is I consider myself a pretty experienced psychonaut. I've probably taken LSD over 100 times, and perhaps combined with mushrooms at least 100 times. I know a lot of people like to brag and say, oh, I've taken things thousands of times, but it's not how many times you've taken it. It's about what you've learned in your experiences, and that's really the discussion I want to have here. I want to start off, since it's all off the top of my head, with what I was thinking about earlier. It was something I learned from Manly P. Hall, and he, years ago, I remember him saying, you can have a scholar go to college, and they can study ancient Egypt for days, months, weeks, years, decades, and they can learn everything they can possibly learn about Egypt. But eventually you have to go there. And once you've been there, you can possibly learn more in a month than you could have in years of learning about it in books and text. Now, you may be thinking I'm comparing that to actually taking psychedelics versus reading about them, but I'm not. I'm actually talking about applying what you've learned with psychedelics versus just taking psychedelics. And so let me back up for a minute. A lot of folks, especially when they're younger, they may start taking mushrooms, LSD, and they find some great awareness that they didn't know they had, a truth about the universe, about themselves, about each other, a connection with everything and everyone, something that they always knew was there, but just couldn't put into words. And all of a sudden they have a way to communicate and connect with other people. But there's an underlying lesson there that teaches you to apply this to your life and live a very moderate and basic and, happy life as much as possible, but to work on yourself and improve upon yourself. What happens is this lesson is taught, but when people come back down and they go back to reality, they don't want to live in, quote, the real world, or I don't need a job. You get what a lot of people would consider kind of the hippie mentality of just tune in, turn on, drop out, right? To an extent that works. Only until you've learned the lessons you need to learn. Then you need to go to Egypt. I'm a carpenter. When I learned how to do carpentry, I never went to school for it. I learned it on the job. And I was thinking about this earlier. If you'd gone to college for carpentry, you might be able to use a nail gun and some wood. You might be able to build a basic frame. But until you've applied that and gone on site and built a house, you can't have any fathomable idea about how complicated it really is and all the little nuances that go into this. And that's very comparable to the way that when you take psychedelics, you have this illusion that the world should be about peace and love and connections and everybody's all one. But when you try to really apply that and make that work, you'll find that the world is cold, distant, trivial, complicated. And so what a lot of people do is, instead of trying to incorporate themselves and integrate within that society, they withdraw. And often are the ones who, let's say, create a commune and move away from society, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that there's a problem. I actually want to buy land and get away from people. But the message I'm trying to convey here isn't about them being wrong. It's about the psychedelic delusions that are rarely spoken by psychonauts and explorers. We know that taking LSD or psilocybin can cause delusions. It's not necessarily that the drugs do this, but the gateways they open up, the communication within your brain, can trigger some very strange ideas about what you think is true, what you think is important. And I've seen this firsthand. I've had it happen to me. I've seen it happen to others. I helped someone through 2 or 3 months of full-blown psychosis, where at one point I had a friend who even forgot who they were. And I've seen some really weird things happen. And I've seen some weird things happen to people while they're taking psychedelics, or at least during the period of taking them intermittently. I've never really seen psychedelics themselves cause psychosis other than temporarily. But the point I'm making here is that it's not usually the drugs themselves, but rather they open up a doorway to a part of your brain that is already susceptible. And often this can trigger either psychosis or schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, a variety of different conditions which can arise once you've seen some truths that you had kept hidden for so long. And as people try to reconcile this, they find themselves with a Jesus complex, or what they call the Messiah complex. This is so extremely common with psychedelic users that I believe this is partially responsible for why you will see kind of the guru complex with a lot of psychedelic users. They think that they can teach others, they think they can help others through their problems. They say, I've seen the light, I've had this awareness, and now I can share this with the world. Timothy Leary syndrome, if you will, which, all respect to the man, he just took it too far. Psychedelics aren't for everyone. That's my opinion. But this Messiah complex is so common and so prevalent within the psychedelic community, and is so rarely talked about, even though it's so prevalent, that there's even a song about it, which, if you're a Deadhead, I'm a Deadhead, I've been a Grateful Dead fan for years. If you are, you probably may or may not know, I guess, that the song Estimated Prophet, which is actually a very popular Dead song. And one of the lines is, California, preaching on the burning shore. And it's about this hippie who basically goes off the deep end and thinks that has a Messiah complex. He thinks he's Jesus, that he can lead the flock. It's very subtle, and not a lot of Deadheads are aware of that unless they are, hardcore. But it's a funny story, because when you really listen to it that way, you can recognize how many of these people who go to festivals, go to concerts, take psychedelics, and all of a sudden think they have the answers to the universe. They think they understand. Everything makes sense now. Reincarnation, and I'm this soul, and look, I need to fix my chakras, I need to adjust this and that, and oh, I'm a Sagittarius, or I'm a Libra. None of that shit really matters. I say that in all respect, with love. To all the people out there, if you're huffing and puffing thinking, dude, you don't know what you're talking about, all these things are true, just realize we manifest our own reality to such an extent that if we really believe that it matters whether we're a Sagittarius, which I am, by the way, then it matters. And look, I only say that because as a Sagittarius, I'm actually am an archer. I'm very stubborn, but I consider myself a somewhat intelligent person, but all of the characteristics of the Sagittarius fit me to a T. And if I wanted to believe that, I could easily say I'm the ultimate Sagittarius. But I don't, because it doesn't help me define who I am. And let me allow myself to take this moment to connect it to my previous video I made today, if you haven't seen it already. If I was more organized, I would connect it and post a link, and it would pop up on the screen like right here and say, oh, here's the video. It was about authenticity. Being authentic. What does it mean to be authentic? And being authentic means not that you step away from society, man, and you wear a bandana and a tie-dye like everybody else. That's just being another in a different flock. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as we're willing to acknowledge it. If you want to be an island out there and not be like anybody else, that's fine. You can be that way. If you want to fit in the counterculture, or what you consider to be the counterculture, that's fine too. And if you want to go in the mainstream and that's what you want to do with your life and wear Supreme clothing and, Abercrombie and Fitch, go for it, man. But the point being that people who take psychedelics get to a point where they see things differently. And I'm not talking about as individuals. There's a collective consciousness that only comes from taking psychedelics, usually LSD and psilocybin. And I would like to say that people who take MDMA have seen this light, but often they don't. It's just a party drug for a lot of people. But when you take a heavy dose of psilocybin, for example, and I'm talking like 3 to 5 grams, and at one time I took 7.5 grams of very strong mushrooms, and it was a beautiful experience. You can see some amazing things about yourself that you weren't aware of, and laugh at yourself. And this is the key. This is what I've learned is the most important thing that you can learn from psychedelics. Beyond love and connection and bonding with the world, you have to learn to laugh at yourself. Because if you're still taking yourself too seriously, if you're still trying to get people to respect you and worrying about what other people think about you and how people see you all the time, you'll never be happy and you'll never get it. And I don't mean that offensively. I mean that as a way to teach people who are in that realm where they're saying, wait a minute, I need to be respected. Do I? Like, why? Who has to give a shit about you? Your loved ones, your friends, family, people you want around you. It doesn't mean you have to accept all the bullshit around you. You will find what works for you. And I think that's what psychedelics have taught me, is that I have to find my own truth. They're not going to help me. So to come full circle and make my final point here, if you do take psychedelics, you have to realize it is like a college course. As I said, eventually you have to go out and do the job, which means live the life that you're talking about, that you're thinking about. But on top of that, you can't be a lifelong school, one of those people who just goes to college for life, right? There's some people who just never stop going to school. It's great, they learn things. But often I'm talking about the type of folks that are just looking to just keep busy and never really commit to anything. And with psychedelics, exactly the same way. People who continue to take, I know people who take acid, claim to take acid almost every day. And honestly, even though I love, I have 3 or 4 people I know I've talked to who do that, and I respect them and love them as humans, but I just think it's foolish and dumb. It's like taking medicine every so often. Like for me, psychedelics are something I take when I need to understand and relearn. It's like reading a book again, okay? And I can't read that book every single day because I'm not going to learn anything new. The only time you're going to learn something new is if you read it after you've lived life for a while. Then you can reread it and start to gain new insight. And those are my thoughts on psychedelics. It's not about becoming a better person or proving who you are or any of that shit. It's about finding out where you stand as an individual and how to spend the rest of your decades living happily. And those are my thoughts. So, as I say, feel free to leave a comment. I'm going to post this on my main channel and hopefully YouTube doesn't give me a strike. Raw thoughts, of course, as usual. So, thank you to my new patrons. I have a couple of new patrons. I can't recall the names right now, but I'll post them later. And If you'd like to become a patron and get more psychedelic content, I'll be posting more of these probably soon, but they'll be unlisted. So thanks for listening. Talk to y'all later. Take care of each other. Later. Thanks for coming to Carpo's channel, yo. Yeah.